G'day folks, we're in the back of the ute with Helen McCosker, who is the co-founder of the National Regenerative Agriculture Day, and that is today, February the 14th.
February the 14th, Farmers and Foodies hijacking Valentine's Day.
Exactly.
What better day?
I know, and what I loved when you first set this up was the fact that the diamond
Yes,
is 100%
carbon. Yes, I've forgotten about that.
Yeah,
that was
so
cool.
that was really a long time ago, I think.
Yeah.
and so I've actually got her on the day here at Picco's Farm with Helen Lewis and Sarah Fee organising this beautiful event, and we've got speakers and a little field day, and it's fantastic and so lovely to actually get to talk to you.
I know, it's amazing that you're here because I've been following all of the things that you've been doing, and we met the first time at the launch of 2040.
Yes.
And that was pretty cool. But why don't I share with you like how this all started?
Yes,
like,
please.
So back in, oh my gosh, do you remember the drought back in 2017, 2018? It was really bad.
Yeah.
And I live in a, near Inverell, we live in a 3,000 acre property. We call it heaven on earth. And we were going through a terrible drought. And I went into our little local town of Ashford, and there was a big glass jar there full of $50 notes.
Wow.
Like, please support our local farmers during drought. And this was quite amazing to me because the little town of Ashford is like the lowest socio-economic town in Australia. And so I just was so moved by, people just putting money in when they didn't have it themselves to support farmers. So I came home and just told Mike, and Mike's my husband, and one of the things was that we had a friend of ours she was a tree changer artist from Melbourne, and we sat around the kitchen table and just said, we really need to get the awareness of regenerative agriculture out. Like at the moment, millions of dollars is going into buy a bale program and food packages for farmers.
Yeah.
And like that's a really great emergency response, but what's our long term?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? And because Mike and I knew so much about soil health and soil biology, we've been teaching farmers for a long time. So we're like, well, Kelly Jones said, well, why don't we set up a day? And I'm like, okay, how do we do that? So we're just like, well, we can just set up a day and we'll call it, and Kelly said, we'll call it Farmers and Foodies Hijacking Valentine's Day. So it was just a celebration of awareness around regenerative agriculture. So we sort of came up with that idea in, I think it was October 2018, and it would be launched in February 2019.
That's right, because I had just finished filming the doco at the end of January, beginning of February 2019, and it was so dry.
Yeah, it was terrible.
It was really bad. Yeah, we didn't have rain until that following summer.
Yep. And the really cool thing was that Kate Spry had just about ready to launch the regenerative agriculture curriculum for schools. So it was like the perfect timing. She'd been working for Kiss the Ground over in the US. So we were like, oh, okay, let's launch that. So Kelly and she's just got incredible ideas on like how to make regenerative agriculture fast food for the audience. Because like there's a lot of complexity in understanding the science of carbon. And so anyway, we came up with this really cool plan to do like particularly focused with kids and families and how everyone can have a kitchen table conversation that wouldn't cost a lot of money.
Yep.
Right? So the idea was like how do you explain what carbon is? So we did this chocolate experiment. So chocolate, right? Everyone loves chocolate, hey?
Yeah.
So we put together this really cool experiment. So you buy the cheapest chocolate you can, like Black and Gold, or Cadbury's, for example. That's basically use kids that are slave labour, uses high chemical inputs. There's no real care for the environment. You buy that chocolate, and then you buy a mid-range chocolate, and then you buy something like the beautiful fair trade.
Darryl Lee actually is no palm oil anymore.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Darryl Lee.
Australian.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Awesome. So we actually got funding. We got one of our sponsors was, anyway, it was they basically source farms in South America, and they basically look at the history and they chart the whole story of the farmers and how they work. So they're really connected to their farms. So anyway, so we had like 4 different types of chocolates, And what you do is you get them and you mix them all up, and then you lay them out, and then you pick one up and you close your eyes and you put it in your mouth and you taste it, and you just talk about what you're experiencing and what you're feeling, right? And so, like, obviously, you know, for adults who know dark chocolate and the beautiful, how when you put it in your mouth, it just feels luxurious and it melts in your mouth, and like all your little endorphins are going crazy, and compared to Cadbury, which I don't like Cadbury, some people do, and that's okay, but when you compare that to eating Cadbury chocolate, you feel the stickiness of it and the sugar hit and the so that was like so we said that basically when you have your chocolate, Cadbury chocolate, that's like less than 1% carbon in the soil, right? And then if you have your beautiful, amazing chocolate that is basically grown on nutrient-dense soils, is basically beautiful ecosystems functions, like the the perfect regenerative farm. Yeah. This is the perfect chocolate that would have 8% carbon in the soil.
Wow. So yeah, you're actually putting the carbon side of things into your taste, an actual sense, so that you can feel it,
yes, rather
than just know it or listen to it.
Yes, yeah, because carbon's such an innocuous sort of sounding thing, and I think that particularly our audience has been not just farmers but foodies, because at the end of the day it's actually foodies, when they make the decision about the food they eat, that's where the magic will actually really happen, and we'll actually start getting a lot of farmers transitioning to regenerative agriculture.
Yes. So you said something to me last night about why this day is now even more special. What happened? Was it last year or the year before?
Yeah, so in 2020, the Greens contacted me, Senator Rice, on I think 2 days before February the 14th, and she said that she wanted to make an announcement in Parliament that National Regenerative Agriculture Day would be basically put through the House as a motion to celebrate this forevermore. Is that okay? And I'm like, oh my God, that's so amazing, of course.
Yeah.
So they moved this motion about how we recognise the importance of regenerative farming in Australia, and we welcome all of farmers around Australia with the idea of eventually transitioning, something like that. I can't quite remember, but it was pretty cool. It was really exciting. So that was in, like, who would have thought?
Yeah.
I would have thought.
and so out of the blue, really, as well. Like, no one had anybody written to her. She just obviously through the grapevine seen and understands the regenerative farming side of things.
Well, I've got to say that the political, in politics, people now have a general idea about regenerative agriculture and the importance of it. There's obviously a lot of interest, because when farmers start sort of going down the road of regenerative agriculture, then you've got a whole chemical industry that you're not using anymore. So so I think that there's like a real, the government are being a little bit cautious of, you know, supporting regenerative agriculture, because there's a lot at play. But look, I think that, you know, this was like a really big win for regenerative agriculture.
And how ironic that is how mentally they are thinking, because to me and to you, more at play if we don't go down this regenerative place. It's not about corporations, it's not about the greed, the money side. This is purely about living. And what we heard last night was Cindy O'Meara talking about the fact that if our food has no minerals in it, we are dead.
Exactly.
And we are only one generation away from extinction.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So look, last night we had an event with Cindy O'Meara and Gundi Rhodes, and they both actually, it was quite interesting that their conversations actually touched on very similar themes. Yeah. And it's actually about glyphosate and the terrible, terrible effects that glyphosate has on the soil and human health, and an understanding that with all of this terrible health that's going on in our system, the effect on the health of our bodies and the health of our landscapes, that we can actually turn this around really quickly.
Yeah.
And so that hope is like fundamental. And I think that as a regenerative farmer, the hope is the thing that like really changed. Like I remember the drought and just looking at every day and just knowing that we had no control over the drought and looking at this terrible brittle environment and the brown and the grey, and it was just like that sort of death of nothing growing.
Yeah.
And what was a miracle to me was when it started to rain, oh my gosh, it just like everything bloomed all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And it was like, and then watching the magic of nature, where during drought, everything is in like hibernation.
Yeah.
And everything and everyone, and because it's so dry, the plants actually drop the seeds in the ground. So when we came out of drought, oh my God, there was just a proliferation of seeds that burst out.
Yeah.
But in normal times, you know, that doesn't happen. So so nature was this incredibly resilient sort of space where there were, you know, I mean, and also a lot of weeds. So what happens is obviously nature's trying to make sure that moving forward that it's going to basically keep all of its plant diversity. So we had lots of weeds and lots of everything.
Yes.
So one of the things that we did in terms of like coming through and seeing so many weeds was let's put in a multi-species crop. Because what we wanted to do was we didn't want to kill all the weeds. We wanted to and we'd also, coming out of the drought, we still didn't have too much of plant life. So we decided to put in an 18 species, multi-species crop. And I said to Mike, wouldn't it be really cool if we could get some flowers? Like put some flowers, like actual flower seeds.
Yep.
So I got in touch with this crew that were doing meadow flowers. They were like they came in from the UK and like meadow flower species.
Yes. Yeah.
And there were Australian species as well, obviously, like the good old sunflowers and all of those. But what we did was I bought this seed packets that arrived, and Mike just laughed at me because he was planting like 16 tons of seed, and I had my little packet, and he said, "Darling, where are you going to plant these? Which row do you want me to mix these flowers into?" It was great, but it was just like that real understanding that like you can't have sustainability or be regenerative without having beauty in the landscape.
Yeah.
So this is like the thing that when we connect to our hearts around Regenerative Agriculture Day, and we have those conversations that everyone can take part of, you know, that not just farmers but foodies as well.
Yeah.
And the understanding that foodies themselves can be farmers as well, like, you know, connecting to where their food comes from.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. The Carbon8, that's slightly different to the Regenerative Day.
Yeah, so the National Regenerative Agriculture Day now has now become a part of Carbon8. So Carbon8 is a charity that was specifically set up for farmers to help them transition to regenerative agriculture. So what happens is that when a farmer signs up to Carbon8, we send them a couple of books on regenerative agriculture that they can choose. So some of the favourites that I think most people like what's your favourite regen
Well, the one
book?
that I hear all the time is Dirt to Soil.
Yes.
I haven't actually read it, but it's Dirt to
yes.
Soil. Charles Massey one I loved. It was heavy, but full of words.
Yeah.
Just incredibly written.
Yeah. So we've got a library of amazing books that that farmers can choose from. So another beautiful one is Nicole Masters, which is wonderful. There's some holistic grazing, and there's quite a lot there to choose from. So when farmers actually sign up to Carbon8, they get these free books, and then we start them on the regenerative pathway. And what's really cool is that we're just about to launch the Carbon8 regenerative certification. Yeah, so it just means now if farmers wanting to get into the carbon market, there is actually a pathway now.
Okay.
So
because there's been lots of different people, well, not people, but organisations with measuring the carbon and getting them into the carbon farming side of things. So does that mean that farmers go to the Carbon8 first before they're funneled out?
Well, what happens is, so we've been working with the Regen Farmers Mutual. I don't know if you know about the Regen Farmers Mutual. It's basically a mutual that has been set up specifically for farmers. So it means then that when farmers join, 80% of any of the funds that are made within the carbon market are kept by the farmers. So this is like a totally different from the sort of the carbon trading traders who take a higher cut than. And the other really amazing thing is that there's a beautiful mentoring process that goes on within the mutual. So what happens is that Carbon8 is designing a certification that will be more than just measuring carbon. It's about also helping measure biodiversity and helping measure the water infiltration. And we're also looking at nutrient density, so taking nutrient density. So the beautiful thing about the certification is it's all outcomes. It looks at outcomes rather than process, which is the organic industry certification is very much on process. And so what this certification is about outcomes. That's really cool.
So is it definitely certification, or is it more like verification?
Well, it is certification because we're working with farm labs. So we use an online mapping system, and basically we map the farm, which is with what's called the cadastral boundaries. Very technical. Yes. But what's really cool is that we can, with satellite mapping, we can choose points on the farm for when the soil tests are actually done. Those soil tests are actually linked directly on using the technology. The soil tests go to EAL or any other testing laboratory lab wherever it is closest to where you are.
Yep.
And so now we can actually test your soil carbon, we can test chemical residues, we can test a number of things doing your soil test, and it all gets done automatically without having a huge process of like getting envelopes out, and which is all really good, but
yes. It's a bit quicker.
but we're just really ramping up the technology and the digital, a way to really simplify the process for farmers to really, so that they can actually really come into this market, because it's really complex. It's a really complex process.
It is. Yeah. Now, with that side of the technology, will us foodies and consumers actually be able to check into our local farmers so that we know how well they're improving? Because one of the things that with Farming Revolution is I'm really pro documenting, but not necessarily me, but anybody who's on farm, who's doing the transitioning and telling the story, because we love stories. And to know that it's gone from this state to this state in X amount of years, that's the real information that we want to know. And so that we can support that for them then transitioning a little bit more into the future.
And that's exactly why we need a certification like this, like a regenerative certification, because we want to know if there's any chemical residue. We want to know, what the levels of carbon in the soil. We want to know what the nutrient density is. We want to know what the water infiltration capacity is. So all of those things we can actually show, we can share the journey of the farmer from when they started right through. So farmers can actually obviously choose whether that information is public or not, because that's their own information.
Yeah.
But this is a wonderful way for foodies to now start getting engaged and knowing where the farmer comes from, actually looking, you can't measure what you can't manage, right? Is it can't measure what you can't manage?
Can't manage what you can't measure. Yes. Well, you haven't measured. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So this is like the perfect way for foodies to actually really, like that measurement side is actually one of the key things for people to trust the information, trust the farmer, and it doesn't get greenwashed. Like it's a win-win. It's amazing. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's really good to know. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I always learn something in the back of the ute. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss or mention? Yeah, actually,
it's really exciting. On the 27th of February, Landline is doing a piece on carbon and carbon in the soil.
Ah.
So that's really exciting, and talking to regenerative farmers, and they're actually talking to Mike and I, and talking about Carbon8, and also, of course, Charlie Arnott, who we all love, our pin-up boy for Regen, will be on there. So that's happening on Sunday, the 27th of February.
So that's being shown on TV?
On TV, on Landline, on the ABC. So that's well worth watching, because it'll give a lot more information, and I think the whole story is really, really important for farmers who are really interested in the carbon market, don't understand it, and just wanting to know more about it. So this is like the perfect thing. So
well done. That's great, and happy Regenerative Day.
Happy National Regenerative Agriculture Day.
Can't say it all. That's right. Carbon8. So thank you so much, and we've been left. Everybody's just gone off to
everyone's gone off to field day.
So I think we better pull it up now, but yeah, it's been an honour to have you in the back of
I
the
know.
on this special day, and thank you so much. And it's the first time we've really had a proper conversation.
I know,
isn't
it's
it?
great. Thank you, Tamsin, and thanks for all the cool videos and YouTubes you've been
I'm
doing.
actually
They're so
really
cool.
chuffed you're watching me, because I'm watching you.
I know, it's cool, isn't it?
Thanks,
Thank you, thank you.
Brilliant.
That was a bit of fun.
Yes, it is. Well done. You did very well, and I did press record.
Yes. Good-o, that's great.
So there you go, 20 minutes.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that went like that.
I know, doesn't it?
Wow, man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh.